And welcome to Revolution Radio. You're here with Jay and comedian Paul Hooper. Paul, how you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I can't complain. Can't complain. I get to do radio, so that's fun.
Yeah, that's all right. That's a pretty good gig. Yeah.
So you had a show last night at the Looney Bin. How did that go?
It was fun. The crowd was really good. It's like Thursday. I traveled all day, so it's a little groggy, but I almost like doing those more in a way because I'm a little dizzy from travel. And then the crowd was awesome last night.
Really,
Really
you,
fun.
you prefer kind of just getting in town, doing the show the same day?
Yeah, you usually do that. And those early travel days where you get in and you haven't had a super early flight, like so you sleep 2 hours, then get on sleep an hour on a plane, you sleep 30 minutes in a plane, then get in and sleep an hour, and then go do a show. It hurts, but when you get on stage, I don't know. It's sort of fun to do in a way because you're definitely in the moment and you can't think ahead too much. And then it's just the crowd last night was just like fun to mess with. Yeah. So I like those travel days. I like waking up in one place, and ending up in another.
No, that would definitely be cool. It definitely, I'm sure, kind of adds to that almost rock style, rock star lifestyle that comedians live. You know, most of us get on a plane like maybe once a year. You're traveling all the
Yeah,
time.
I mean, I think I'm a little bit backwards because I think I've been doing on the road most of my adult life, so I think I'm sort of backwards in that. Last year there was like a month where I spent the entire month at home. It was the first time I slept in my own bed every day of the month in 15 years, and I hated it. I hated it. I'd just rather be in a hotel on the road in a different town. I mean, it's just I like going home for a bit, but not a month. I still like my normal is you know every few days you go somewhere different. So I get bored when I can't. So I like the road.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you when you said you're home for the longest time, which is crazy. The longest time you've been home in 15 years is 1 month.
Yeah, yeah, it's too
But
much, man.
I mean, do you just feel like you're just spinning your wheels? You need to get out and do something, or is it literally like just the environment is not enough? You
I
need
like
it changing all the time.
I think I've gotten used to just a change of scenery. I get bored fast, and I think the road and as painful as airports are and stuff like that, and infuriating as they can be, they sort of give me a sense of purpose. When I'm going to an airport, I'm going to do a gig, and that's just sort of in my life. So when I get there, I know I'm like going forward. I don't know. I always think of that way. When I'm in one place for too long or too much time away from shows, I get I sort of lost. I don't know what to do. And so when I have shows, I keep moving, keep traveling. That's always been the way I do it. Stay busy, and then I'm okay. My head's all right.
I mean,
It's backwards. It's not healthy probably, but whatever.
what is healthy, honestly? I mean, but
Yeah,
I'm sure that, yeah, I mean, you probably are kind of just like everyone else. You'd feel like you're going to be irrelevant if you take too much time off, and I'm sure that gets
yeah.
to you
You get
too.
yeah. If you don't get on stage enough, don't do enough shows, kind of moving. A break is good, but there doesn't need to be a month-long break. A few days here and there is good, and then you go again. That goes for the shows. That goes for travel. Anything like that. Just a few days to rest and recover, and go again. And so I don't know. At some point, I'm going to have to learn in my life just sit still. But for now, I still like it. I still like that I'm in Wichita, and I'll go to North Carolina after this, then New York, and then in a couple weeks I'm in Fort Worth, Texas. I like that schedule.
I could see that, but I don't know if that ever like goes away, especially from a showman. I was listening to Larry King recently, and Dave Attell was on, and he asked him like, "What is your biggest fear?" And he's like, "When I can't do stand up anymore and I can't travel." And you're thinking,
Yeah,
Dave Attell? I mean, good lord, he's been doing it for years. He's got to be ready to retire, but
one of the best. Yeah, and I think it's just like we all hope that we can do it till the very end, till we're 80 years old or however long we make it. Because you never really think it through. You never do. You sort of thinking we can do it longer than most. All we need to do is be able to get on a plane or in a car and then be able to walk on stage and be able to have a voice and talk. But at some point it does get harder, and you know, so you always hope. But yeah, I always think that too. Of like, oh man, that would be weird to retire from. I would like to do it to the end, but yeah. So
Have you had that moment where you've thought like, God, it would like as much freedom as you have, and the self-expression, everything else, it's still at some point it's you have to be a self-starter. You have to, if something collapses, that's on you. Like, has there been a point where you're
right.
like, God, I just want to get like a normal square job?
Well, there's like the aspects of this. This business is the most unstable business in the world. I mean, it's just so that part of it. The downside of that of, if you're off, you don't make a penny, or things happen in this business where clubs close, or whatever, a tornado, a hurricane, all these things can stop you from doing your work. And it's not like anyone else's job. You don't get really like all this paid time off. You make your own work, and when there's no work, there's $0. And so something happening and changing your plan, there's no sick pay, there's no vacation leave, there's none of that stuff. Sometimes there's not a lot of retirement. That's on you to make that out. There's not 401ks. There's not, you know, all this stuff is on you. So that part of it is scary and can be really bad, but it's just part of it. So it's nerve wracking for sure. And as you get older, it is scarier because you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I should, I guess, retire at some point, but you don't have that normal job. So that's the downside. You
Right.
get your own insurance. You figure out that. No sick days, no insurance unless you pay for it. So
Yeah, or
there's no
unless you're
company to pick up the bill.
you're just like trying to get bit parts so you can get into SAG or something. But yeah,
Yeah, that part of it is really hard and you know
t-
frightening at times. But
but it's never been enough for you like seriously thinking about switching.
no, I've never been able to think. This goes back to when I started. So I'm like, I'm 44 now, and in February it'll be 22 years in comedy. So half my life has been in comedy. I started at 22. Equal parts. 22 years in comedy, and I think about before it, I'd sort of screwed up in high school, so the college thing, I was going to have to go to a community college to start again, or I was going to have to work some dead-end jobs, or I thought about going in the military. But I didn't want to be a doctor, lawyer, all these things. None of them were as exciting as comedy. And now I look at it, I'm like, even if in the middle, right here, right now, I could, which it would be even harder to switch to something now at this age. None of them sound appealing to me. Comedy's still what I want to do. So I'm sort of stuck. And dude, so I'm in. So
I
we'll
understand
see.
completely. I mean, and yeah, I mean, I'm like 37 myself, and yeah, I know how that is. Like, if you lose your livelihood, it's like starting over again. Like, who's gonna hire me? I'm old and stubborn, and yeah.
Yeah, man. I have no college degree, zero experience, zero. The last job I had was working the front desk of the comedy club when I started at 22 or 23 years old. Before that was, some other job at an irrigation company. I was like 21, 22. That's the last thing on my resume. So I don't know what I put. Stand-up comedy for 2 decades on a resume? I don't know,
I
man.
see. I
I don't
think
even know how it works.
that's rather impressive because I mean that's hard. That's really hard to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, you can argue you have a lot of tenacity.
That's true. Just to survive in this business, and I'm proud that I've lasted, that long. And I've seen people drop from the beginning. You start comedy like I started, and of the group I started with, maybe 3 are still around of the 20 something, and then there'd be new groups of open micers, and most of them dropped. So 3 out of 100 something, and people that were good quit along the way, and then over those 20 years, so many people have disappeared. So I'm proud that I've lasted as long as I have. It's just, you always have to step it up and get it to another level and
So
try to.
with that in mind, yeah, I gotta ask you, and it's one of those questions that I do kind of hate asking, but what's the difference between the material that you started off writing and the material that you write now?
It's, I think when I was 22, so when I started, my material reflected that, and that, my stuff was pretty, all I cared about, the whole world was new. Travel was new to me. Alcohol and partying was new to me. Um, I didn't have much. I'd had one girlfriend at that point, so everything was new. So it was drinking, travel, sex, all these things were new to me
Hmm.
at 22 years old. And so my act was very a few topics. I felt like it was me making a lot of noise and writing original jokes about those things. But that it was a lot of farting and being irresponsible and just being this 20-something-year-old just yelling about all of it and just all this energy and youthful exuberance, just reckless as hell. And now, the girl, I sobered up when I was 30 years old. And then all the things go, you have a few more relationships that don't work out and, money problems, or you see a little more of the world. So I just, your act sort of spreads out and you get a few more things. There's a little more maturity, hopefully. And you say, make it all funny, but hopefully you can make, more complicated things funnier or get on some kind of a deeper level besides just, ranting and raving about alcohol and drugs and women. I think that's what it was for a couple, few years in the 20s. It was very simple. I was just like a grown child,
Yeah, yeah. By the way, we're sober buddies. We both got sober at the age of 30.
Oh, that's great, man. I'm gonna tell you what. Congratulations. That's the best thing ever. I never felt worse in my life than when I was 30 years old physically. I'm 44 now. It feels so much better than when I was 30 years old. I thought I was going to die, and so I couldn't feel. I didn't have the circulation in my hands was bad. I looked bad. I was in rough shape. So
It's
this is better.
yeah, it's pretty awful. And I mean, I think, not to harp on that too much, but I know for myself, in a lot of ways, and I wasn't like a person who'd just get up and drink, but I'd drink, as soon as I got off work to the time I went to bed, and um, it required a lot of learning, like a new process, and where I'd listen to music a lot and drink. Well, I had to change that. How was that with comedy? I mean, you stayed in that same profession, and yeah, I switched
Yeah.
professions as well. That gave me the opportunity. So, I mean, how were you able to do that?
Well, it's a couple things. There's like the on-stage stuff and the off-stage stuff. So on stage, from the time I started, I'd always taken a beer on stage or had a few drinks before I went up for the nerves. And so you got to learn how to go on stage for the first time. I'm what 8, 9 years into comedy when I sober up. So had to take a Red Bull on stage or something strong, but not alcohol. And you start to get through that, the nerves of that, and then I had the nerves of what am I going to do after the show? How am I going to go to a hotel room by myself and sit there sober in Jacksonville, Florida,
Yeah.
or wherever, Toledo, Ohio, when I don't know anyone and I'm bored and all that. So one of the first weeks I was sober, I did actually go to Jacksonville, which was a big party town for me, and I did the shows. They weren't as hard as I thought. I actually enjoyed doing the shows more because I felt like my mind and my mouth were synchronized finally, and there wasn't that alcohol delay.
Yeah.
And the nerves, I had a little more nerves, and you just have to learn to combat that and just like get through it and just accept it. You don't have this numbing agent in you, so you just do it. But I felt like the shows, I was more aware. I was better. And then when I got off stage, I went back to the room and I realized that my life had been so loud and chaotic up until that point with alcohol and drugs that when I went back to the hotel rooms, I was happy for like peace and quiet. I just was tired. And so I would read a book, call a friend. It wasn't as hard for me. Maybe I got lucky, or I just got out when I was fed up at my breaking point, because that week in Jacksonville really, at the end of the week, I had all my money because I wasn't going out blowing it on booze.
Hmm.
And I did a few weeks like that, and the incentive to stay sober was right there because I was just like, oh, I can finally pay my bills and pay my DUI off like an adult human being, and I feel better. I'm eating better food, and no one's mad at me, and I didn't have to apologize, and the shows were fun, or I remember every second of the show instead of blacking out on the late show, and all this. So,
Yeah, no, I definitely can see that. And there's that point of, and I think, yeah, you hit the nail on the head where you are kind of fed up with it. It's not like you haven't enjoyed it for a while.
right,
But
it's a long time, and then the thing with sobriety I think you have to deal with is, eventually you do have, sooner than later in comedy, you don't get a run of just amazing show after amazing show. There's going to be a rough one or you're going to bomb, and learning how to deal with that sober and sit on it. Because used to, if you bombed before, you could go out and just get hammered and blow it off, and now you're going to a hotel room and you got to absorb it. So trying to push that and just, you just sort of get through all of that. And I think it's healthier that you honestly, it hurts a little more, but, it's better that you're aware
yeah,
and
no,
not
I
just,
think you're 100% right, and it probably makes you better because instead of just doling it, getting drunk, and saying, it was them, not me, you have a chance to think and be like, oh, I could tighten this up, or I could. come up with a different line at the end, you know, something
Right,
like
yeah,
that.
you listen to the recording and you make notes and you're like, that's where I screwed up, or I did that wrong, or I got it backwards. And yeah, you actually think about the technical side of it and make notes or write, or you're just a little more aware, and all that. It does make you better. I mean, it does hurt in the moment a little more because you feel everything, but it's better. Everything got better, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, you definitely do. That was the other thing I was gonna mention too. Is like, yeah, it's like a new sensitivity. It's really, really weird to when you become sober. But so often people will replace that with something else. Was there something that you replaced um, the booze with?
No, I didn't. I mean, the thing is, I didn't replace it with anything. I mean, I just quit smoking cigarettes like a year ago. That was another thing. Cigarettes,
Ooh.
and I was vaping. So, that's, I always think of recovering alcoholics drink a ton of coffee and smoke tons of cigarettes, like every AA meeting. And, but so that's what I did. Tons of coffee, so many cigarettes up until recently where I had to cut the cigarettes too. But I didn't replace it with anything major like hobbies. I should have. I recently am trying to get healthy. So when I quit smoking, I did replace it with like running, working out. I had to give myself something else to finally get off cigarettes to go off the deep end with because I have an addictive or obsessive mind, and I have to give myself something else to sort of. And I have comedy, but I needed one more thing, and so that seemed to help. But after drinking, it was just more about like comedy, book as much as you can, do as many shows as you can, write new jokes.
Just keep yourself as busy as possible. I
Yeah, and smoke 1 million cigarettes.
I imagine too, like getting into exercising. Comedy's got to kind of be a little bit of a problem. I mean, because you're not sure where a gym is. I mean, if you're in the right neighborhood where you'd be jogging, if that's safe.
It's true. I mean, I'm trying to find one in Wichita. Like, I guess I want to go tomorrow. I was looking around today, go to some YMCA, but you do have to. In travel, they screw it up. You can't do it as much. You can't get to a gym. But then once you're settled in, you can still find it, and it does help the head on the road. Because I do think now, as much as like I do love all that comedy, if every waking moment of the day is thinking about comedy, I get sick of it. So I need a couple hours to get away from even comedy and reset my brain
You should get a pellet.
physically. And
Yeah, no, that
huh?
totally makes sense. You know,
Yeah,
although I was gonna ask you too on that note.
sure.
Have you, with so many comedians, and it seems like it's kind of a popular thing amongst community. Some of them have almost replaced doing stand up as much by doing like their own podcast or their own show. Have you thought about doing that, or do you have one that I'm not aware of? Or
No, I had a buddy about 5 6 years ago. We started a podcast and we just recorded like 10 episodes just as a trial run before we released it and to see. And it was actually fun, but I think we got frustrated and really overthought it, and we're trying to come up with this opening segment to separate how do we make this podcast different from everybody's podcast, which put a little pressure on it. When at the core of it, we do the segment up front and then interview some comics, and I think that, once again, like the interviews and the interesting conversations are everything. So we got these recordings, and the segment up front that we were so sick about was not the thing. It was these good conversations we had, and no one ever heard them with some really good comics. So I think we just really just put too much pressure on it. So we did that. We never released it, and then sort of I didn't want to do it again because that was not fun. And
it does, yeah. At
maybe
times it gets to
someday,
be
but not
work.
not right now.
Yeah, no, I could see that. Um, but yeah, I mean,
I
and
like being a
sometimes
guest.
it could be too with the um not I don't know who you're working with, but sometimes it can matter who you're working with too. I mean, and I've been through a ton of different people, and yeah, some people are really cool, easier to talk to. Other people are very meticulous, and you get the idea. Like, yeah, I understand, but God, you're making this like a job.
Yeah, it's true. And then the flow and the rhythm and all the connection, the stuff that just has to happen, and a lot of it has to be natural. And we were buddies and stuff, but we were just really tinkering and tampering with it too much. The stuff that was not important,
That's
and should have focused on the real stuff. Just yeah, people can pick up on what's authentic or what's interesting. Just get to that. You know.
that's perfect advice. That's one thing I tell people who are wanting to get started. I'm like, uh, it's almost like being in a band. And if you've ever been in a band, you want to come out and you want to be Eddie Van Halen or Metallica, and it's like, no, just start off being Green Day, be three chord band, get it out there, and just keep doing that, and you'll get better. It's one of those things. But
Yeah, be Poison. You know what I mean? Go way back to when they were bad. Yeah, these bands, and so it is true. Yeah, the very simple stuff of just getting it going, and then because the audience wants to hear something interesting, something funny, something like that, and someone who's being real. And then that stuff will always be fascinating to listen to, I think. When you try to come up and just be so clever when you don't really know what you're doing, then it just comes off that way. It's just a cluttered mess. And so that's what we did. We got frustrated and sort of ditched the idea. But, through that, we got some great interviews that I would like to go back and listen to with some great comics.
that's really cool.
And it's somewhere. It's recorded somewhere.
It's on some flash drive somewhere. Who?
I know.
Speaking of other comics, who would you say is a comic either upcoming or who's been in it for a while that doesn't get the praise he deserves, or she?
Yeah, there's so many really good comics. Right now, it's nice thing of funny comics is in New York, there's so many. Evan Williams is a really great comic. He's a North Carolina guy. I'm from North Carolina. We didn't know each other in North Carolina, but he's super funny. Evan Williams, a comic. Olivia Grace, who's been on the road opening for Stanhope, who's super funny. And Justin Smith, who's from out here in Oklahoma, really, really funny dude. And then man, I'm going to draw a blank on some of them, but right now, on the spot. But there's a lot of really great comics that don't have the name recognition or the following or anything that deserve it.
Yeah, I always try to, at least in these interviews, I try to get other comics to talk about because when I first started interviewing comics, uh, I'll be honest, I didn't really want to. I didn't really know that much about comedy, and I was like, I've never, when I heard comics, I would think of like Bill Burr, and I'm like, well, I don't know who this is. And the more and more I heard all these great comics, I was like, God, these guys are amazing. They should be, far more popular. And so I like to try to get as many names going as possible so people will look these people up. And, just like, you know, um, I think one of the first people I started off with was Alvin Williams. And I had no idea who he
Oh yeah,
was. It's just so hilarious. But yeah, Mike Cannon was
it's
another
very funny.
guy. That, yeah.
Oh, Mike Cannon. I love Mike Cannon.
Oh, he's great, right? Like, yeah, we end up kind of
So
becoming
great.
friends. Yeah, he's a really good dude. But yeah, there's just so many people that have no, they don't have the notoriety they should. I should say that. But
Right, yeah. There's Greg Stone, a guy named Greg Stone from New York, who's really, really funny. Clint Noor, he's a Southern guy, like South Carolina, and now lives in New York. And then, man, it could be 20. I could give you 20
oh
names
yeah,
right now.
yeah,
As I think about it, I might just yell them at you. I don't want them to sort of get the airtime. You know,
right, right.
I don't want to forget anyone.
Um, go ahead.
I'm trying to think, right?
Oh no, no, you're fine. You're
I
fine.
want everybody to get their
Oh,
exposure.
you're fine. You're fine. I was also gonna ask you too. What's probably the worst thing that audience members can do either during the show or especially after the show when they come up to talk to you?
I mean, the worst thing is heckling. Yeah, it's all of them. I don't know where it is. And every comedian I talk to, none of us can figure out where it started when they feel like they're helping the show by heckling. I don't know why. Everyone's got that thought in their head, but they're not. They're not. And some comics like doing crowd work. I don't like doing a ton of it because I don't feel like it ends up in an interesting place. I want to be original. And me telling someone to shut up, or just calling them names, it's fun for a bit. But how many different ways can I say it?
Right.
And well, that's not going to go anywhere interesting. If it needs to happen, then I'll do it. But I don't like it as much as my material because I feel like I've worked on this stuff and it's an original story that no one's telling, or a bit, or an angle, or something that you put a lot of work into. And now I'm just yelling at some drunk guy in the back, and it's this bar fight scenario. So I just don't think it's creative. It's not interesting. I'll do it if it's necessary, but if people come out, it's not helping, and that part of it. And then when you get off, after the show and stuff like that. It is the thing of people thinking they were helping. So no, Romo, you're not helping. None of it. Just shut up. It's just like that's what frustrates me sometimes. Is like some of the audiences sometimes don't seem like they're prepared to go on a journey, and they also. So if you're telling a story, you have a bit about your grandmother. You have to trick them into that because they don't want to listen to that. It's not as funny as you doing a dick joke or something simple, a drinking joke that's right down the middle that maybe applies to their night tonight. And it is a very frustrating thing because I always got it wrong. I thought when these people came out to listen to comedy, they sat down, they're going to listen. It's up to me to make the story funny, but I can talk about my grandmother, I can talk about whatever. But no, you really got to find a way to hook them in and make that story interesting to get them to go. It's a big trick because a lot of them want it to be about them sometimes. These are the worst crowd members, by the way. There's amazing audiences that will
Oh
follow you.
yeah, I'm sure.
But there's people that think like that. It needs to be about them at this moment, and heckling is helping. No, not at all, ever. Please stop. God Almighty.
Yeah, I think Biggs there at the Looney Bin, he should do a PSA, like a satirical commercial about how it's not helping. Because so
There's
many
another
people
thing
think they
too.
are.
Yeah, there was something. I did this rough crowd in Florida a few weeks ago. So there was like one guy coughed, right? There were these 3 tables, and they were all different levels of terrible. There was like a sleepy table. Then there was a table of old people who seemed offended. And then there was a table of a guy that just wanted to chat. All right. And so it's all bad. And the chatty guy at some point coughs real loud. I've already told him to shut up. He coughs real loud, and it's in a quiet moment. And the old guy at the other table that seemed offended just goes, "Oh, he must have a hairball." And then the whole table laughs. And then I'm like, that's a terrible joke. I'm like, I don't know where this dad humor or this stuff. I'm like, stop it. And I just like break down why a hairball. A cat has a hairball, now you apply it to a human, and you think that's the funniest thing ever. That's awful. That's terrible. I'm like, you have a learning disability. I don't understand how you think that's funny, and quit doing that at Thanksgiving dinner. Quit doing it at comedy shows. Just quit doing that. It sucks. And so I just went off, and I'm like, please stop. Because the crowd will say terrible jokes, and they all get a big laugh. And I'm like, it's not a good joke. If it was a good joke, I will take my head. If you destroy me, then fine, good. But they rarely surprise you. It's always some old trite hack, grandpa joke.
To be fair, you said you don't like to do crowd work, but I would laugh my ass off with you breaking someone down like that.
I stopped holding back because I'm like, this is now like they don't know how comedy works with it. It's still the same time. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't matter about comedy now. It's a shitty joke, and so I have to, let them know.
Right. Like, do you have anyone like after you get off the stage? Is there anything that audience members can do that irritate you, or I'll just give you an example. I was talking to Greg Morton, and he was just telling me like he feels sometimes like a piece of meat or something. He's like, you get off the stage and people are commenting on your looks, like, hey, what, this looks weird. You should do something about that. And it's like, what an asshole thing to say. It's a person to person. Like, is there anything like that that really irritates you?
There's sometimes too where people are like, I'm short. I'm like 5. I'm exactly 5'6.5". Right down the, I'm not 5'6". I'm 5'7". If you want to get medical, I'm 5'6.5". And people will see you on stage and do that whole thing of like, you look taller on stage, which is baffling. I'm like, all right, it's a stage.
Yeah.
And you can't even make that assessment from the back of a room. I mean, I guess they're just doing it to be funny or maybe make fun of me because I'm short guy. But once again, it's a terrible observation, and it's just, I don't know. That's what sometimes I lose faith in. It's like not everybody should be a comedian, but these observational skills people have, where they stop, and what they think is interesting, is incredibly bad sometimes. And so I just think the short jokes and it's usually drunken rambling. I can't take it because it's the same story over and over again.
Like, I've been this guy for 44 years. I know how tall I am. You don't have to tell me.
It's like this is a good example of it. So I'm from Charlotte, right? And people will bring this up too. This is not just exclusively after a comedy show. This is just a fascinating thing that I've noticed. when people try to communicate and talk to each other and bond with it, because people do that to learn to start a conversation. Where are you from? Where are you from? And so I'm like, I'm from Charlotte. And people go, oh, I flew through Charlotte once, and the airport in Charlotte has rocking chairs in it. I assume because it's a southern state and they want to show some of that southern charm, for some contrived reason. They
Yeah.
slammed 100 rocking chairs. People are blown away. When they go, I'm from Charlotte, they go, I've been at the airport one. It's crazy they have rocking chairs. I'm like, is it crazy? Is that blow your mind? What did they put 50 rocking chairs in the middle of an international airport to go, here's a little southern flair, sit on it, whatever. That's different. But, they're just like, I can't believe it. I'm like, 4 or 5 people have told me this. I'm like, what's wrong with you? You're hung up on that. You're like, that's what you caught from that whole thing. We're having this conversation. I can't believe they got rocking chairs.
They must live
So
the
sad.
most interesting lives.
Like, yeah. And I just cannot figure that type of thing out. It really, people worry me a lot of times of what they notice and what they fixate on. It stops on a real shallow level. I'm like, you don't ask more questions. You don't just understand why maybe that's there and not conversation worthy. But
Yeah, that's
people do,
Yeah, that's unfortunately that's society in a lot of
It
ways.
is
But no,
society. It's very simple.
there's also some great people and some great, yeah. But no, I hear you. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us here. I really appreciate talking
Thank you,
with
man.
you,
Thanks for letting me rant and rave at the end there. You got me all worked up at the end.
Well, hey, you're about to go on here pretty soon, aren't you? You got.
Yeah, I got to get some coffee and a shower. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, guys.
Oh, by the way, if they tell me, here's the thing too. Don't call me, whoever it is, anyone listening to this, do not call me Hopper. My name is Hooper. It's H. That's 2 O's. There's not a tail on the second O. People have been calling me Hopper now for months.
Really?
And it makes me crazy. I don't know what's going on with people's optical nerve or what's happening, but people are really fouling it up. So there's another one.
That's crazy. Cause yeah, there's no other way I would have pronounced that. But yeah, anyway,
Thank
guys,
you. You're a smart man.
if you wanna check out Paul Hooper, really great comedian, real original writer, probably one of the best original uh, writing and delivery I've heard in a long time. Check him out the Looney Bin this weekend. 8 o'clock tonight and 10:30 is your late show. Show up about 30 minutes, 45 minutes early, and then tomorrow night 7:30 and 10 o'clock. Anyway, do you have a website, anything like that you want to plug before we go?
Yeah, paulhoopercomedy.com. So all tour dates and stuff like that are there, all my show dates. And then every social media is just at Paul Hooper or at Paul Hooper Comedy. If you Google Paul Hooper Comedy, everything should show up. So
Awesome.
find me there.
Hey man, you'll have to call back. We're not just local. We also do all around the country as well. So yeah, you'll definitely have to call in when you got another show you want to plug or anything. It was a pleasure talking
I'd love
to you.
to.
Awesome.
Man, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. This is a good talk. This is fun.
I'd love to hear that, brother. You have a good show, man. You take care.
I appreciate it. You too. Thanks again.
Bye bye.